It's interesting. I thought I would share this with you real quickly. In 2007, we moved back from Jacksonville, Florida, and Risha was the worship pastor at Point North Church in Moncks Corner, so we started attending church out there. And a little bit later, I was given the privilege, the opportunity to speak on a Sunday morning. And I was sitting in the pastor's office, and somebody came in and said, I just thought you might want to know that Stephen Furtick is here for the 11 o'clock service. Honest to goodness, I had no clue who Stephen Furtick was. I didn't know who he was. So I'm just sitting there, cool, who's that? I don't know. I'm glad I didn't. And I had no idea. So I go out and I speak in the 11 o'clock service when he's there. He and his wife are home on a little bit of vacation time to visit with their family in Moncks Corner. And so after the service, and this is the part that impressed me. I still didn't know who he was. I would find out later on. But he walked up to me after the service, and this is all he said to me. He said, "Hi, I'm Stephen." That's it. And I want you to know that you blessed a young buck in ministry. Thank you. And that was all he said. Now, I didn't appreciate at that moment how meaningful it would be to me, that moment right there. And not because of his notoriety now, but just because of the man that he is. He didn't look at me and say, "Hi, I'm Stephen Furtick, pastor of Elevation Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm sure you've heard of me." No, he just, "Hey, I'm Stephen. Thanks for blessing a young buck in ministry." I thought, you know what? There's a level of character in that guy that people who see him on television and appreciate his ministry. I watch him on Sunday morning. He comes on at 7:30. It's a good time for me to sit and listen to him speak. To appreciate the character and the integrity that's in him, that he is not a presumptuous man nor an arrogant man. He's just a guy that God's chosen to elevate to a place of ministry. So anyway, his mama attended Point North. Some of you here, many of you probably remember Miss Faith Furtick. And so Risha called and talked to Miss Faith, and she said, "I'll have you seats on the front row with me." So they're getting a little VIP treatment up there as well. So Allie Grace is happy as she can be, celebrating her 16th birthday, but that's where they are. So I thought I'd tell you that. Thought it'd be good to know. Now, I got to figure it out yes, I did it. The last time I tried to adjust the stand, I pulled the wrong lever and my notes and everything just spilled out. So it challenges my missing mechanical skills even to lower and raise a music stand, believe it or not. I'm going to begin a very brief series this morning entitled The Hidden Option. One of the reasons it's going to be brief is because we're moving towards some very important events in Reality Church. And of course, the first one, August 26th, is game day. That's going to be a lot of fun. The parking lot's going to have a lot of neat stuff in it, like tailgate tents and cornhole games. But we've also got the monster game truck coming. This year, we're adding the Kona ice truck. With Hawaiian shaved ice. There's going to be, we had a jump castle last year. This year it's going to be one that's a water slide for the kids. So the kids are going to be able to do that. Now, for those of you who are either stupid enough or courageous enough, there'll be a slip and slide on the other end of the building. And you know which one of those categories that you will fall into, whether you're stupid or you're courageous. If you get hurt, we know which category you're in. But it'll be on the other end. But there'll be just a lot of fun. Included in that also is a meal that we're going to share together. So it'll be right after the service on August 26th. It's the Sunday before college football season launches. So nobody will come in with hurt feelings because their team lost the day before. The college football season starts later on. We encourage you to wear your favorite team colors. It doesn't have to be college football. It's just our timing. Your favorite team colors. That's August 26th, and it's game day. And listen, there is an ulterior motive behind game day this year, and that is to talk to you about getting into the game. Because the next big event is September 16, when we'll launch 2 services, and we'll want you to get into the game with volunteer opportunities that we will be talking with you about moving toward that day. And there'll be outside a table or a tent somewhere where you can talk with someone about the opportunities to get involved in serving and making these 2 services at 9 and 10:30. Had to think for somebody have a shirt on. Stand up and remind me what time service starts. Tom, what time is it? 9 and 10:30. Okay, thank you, Tom. Just so you'll know what time. That starts on September. That's why we got those shirts, so I could remember what time the services are. At 9 and 10:30, but we'll be talking with you more about that. So those are two big events coming up. So all of that leading up to those days, that's one of the reasons why I'll talk to you about the hidden option for just a couple of Sundays. Now, in complete disclosure and attribution, this series is based on a book, The Hidden Option, by a guy named Jonathan Malm, M-A-L-M. So as we talk about this over the next couple of weeks, if you want to get into more in depth into it, you can go and get the book. Can I also be honest and tell you that I am not a big book reader? Probably some of you are. Your pastor is more the Cliff's Notes version of a book reader. And so I like the highlights. And so that's kind of where I go when it comes to a new book. I start looking at chapter titles and which ones really grab my attention. I'm sorry. I know that offends some of you that just you read from when the author gives all of their thanks and you read all the way through the appendix. I know what you do. But I don't do that. So I'm just being honest with you, okay? So I gleaned a lot out of the book that I'm going to share some of that with you over the next couple of weeks, because what we're talking about in the hidden option is igniting creativity to solve life's impossible problems. And some of you sitting here this morning may be faced with a problem that there seems to be absolutely no solution that is acceptable to you. Because we live in a world that is very polarized. We want everything to fit into box A or box B. We want the choice to be left or right. We want it to be black or white. We want it to be fight or flight. We don't like three options. Let me give you an example in my own life. So Jean and I go shopping one day because she's looking for a new pair of shoes. I love to shoe shop with my wife. Anyway, we're at the shoe store, and the young salesman who's helping us has finally narrowed it down with her to two pair of shoes. A or B, left or right, black or white, fight or flight. A and B, right there. She walks away, and he comes out of the back with another pair of shoes, a third pair. Yes, he did. She puts the third pair on and walks away, and I said, I hate to tell you this, but she ain't going to buy any of them shoes now. He goes, what, did I do something wrong? I said, not knowingly. I said, but I know my woman. My woman can walk away from one pair of shoes that she likes. But there is no way she is going to walk away from here from two pair of shoes that she likes. She's going to buy nothing. Wait and see. Jean comes back and sits down, and she goes, I like them all, so I'm just going to wait. There you go. He shakes his head. I said, maybe a lesson learned here. Because that's the way we like it. We want A or B. Another example out of my life, Micah struggled with decision making when he was a child, and so the worst place in the world we could go would be to like a Baskin Robbins or some ice cream shop that had this huge diversity of flavors that the child could pick from. And so we would tell him before we ever walked into the ice cream shop, Micah, these are your two choices, A or B, A or B. You know where Micah always went? C. He always went for C. C could be anything. And the problem was he would stand there and just stare at the ice cream menu because he couldn't make a decision because there were too many options for him. So we kind of like it that way. That's why we only, if I can go there, why we like two political parties. When the third one comes along, we're like, okay, this is too hard of a choice. Give me A or B. And sometimes our choices are reduced to a level where we think, I don't like A or B. And sometimes we define them as, well, I guess I have to pick the lesser of two evils because I don't like either choice. But I got to make a choice. So in this series, the goal is to explore how God, by the Holy Spirit, can take seemingly impossible choices in situations and use those situations to bring honor to His name. That's what this is all about. Would you agree with me this morning that God is bigger than just two options? I mean, I realize that He's referred to as, Jesus is referred to as the lion and the lamb. But that doesn't mean there are only two options in Him, because there's more to Him than just those two things. God is completely just, and He extends grace simultaneously. So when we think about options when it comes to God, God's bigger than and more than just two options. How many of you have heard of the concept of fight or flight? Sure, we've all heard of it. When you're confronted with a survival emergency, people always will default to one of those two responses. Either you're going to run away or you're going to stand your ground and fight. I saw a humorous video the other day of a guy that was a special ops military guy, and the video opened up with, I'm going to show you a couple of methods of defending yourself against a knife attack. And he said you have to pay really close attention because this will happen really, really fast. So don't look away for a moment. Just pay close attention. I'm going to show you how to defend yourself against a knife attack. And then the camera moves to a guy who reaches in his pocket and pulls out a knife. And when the camera swings back to the guy, he is running as fast as he can. How to defend yourself in a knife attack. Even in your own family, there's a different fight or flight response as a survival instinct. I mean, for me, you can count on one hand the number of times I was in a fight in my life. For some of you that got into a lot of brawls as a kid, you lose count of the number. You can count on one hand. Most of the fights I got into were on the football field, so I'm in full football gear. It's hard to get hurt that way. But my son, Ryan, totally different from his dad. His survival instinct was fight. And it didn't matter how big they were, how angry they were. It did not matter to that boy. And there were times when I would actually go up to people and say, do you want to fight my son? You go, no, sir, I do not want to. I said, then you need to leave. Because if this starts, there's no way it stops. Because that's how he is. So we respond, even in our own families. Maybe in your marriage you have different fight or flight responses to survival emergencies, and then you got to figure out how to work that out together. But here's what happens in the impossible situations of life. Sometimes, unfortunately, we carry the same fight or flight response to the more complicated problems that we encounter in life. The more complicated decisions that challenge us, that confront us. And if we do that, consequently, we are going to make some bad choices. When we feel trapped, when it feels hopeless, when we feel like we're caught between the proverbial rock and a hard place, and that fight or flight instinct wants to kick in, we're going to make some bad choices. But what if there were more than two choices? Even though you're unable to see it right now, if you are in this room and you are facing what seems like an impossible decision because the choice is either one that you see right now, A, B, left, right, black, white, fight, flight, neither one of them are attractive to you. But that's all you see. What if there's another choice? What if there's a hidden option to the complex problem you're confronted with? Let's look at the life of Jesus for a minute. We'll glean some important information out of this, okay? From John chapter 8. And by the way, I was absolutely floored at the very first verse that we read. At dawn, he appeared again in the temple courts where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. It made me wonder, okay, our new service schedule, our first service will be at sunrise every Sunday. Yeah, good luck with that, Rick. Okay, enjoy being alone because you ain't even going to get your family to come with you. Okay, at dawn, though, he appeared in the temple. Sunrise, he's there, and people are there to hear him teach. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. Now, do you understand that these are people that opposed Jesus? They oppose the message that he is bringing. Okay? They brought in a woman caught in adultery, which implies there is absolutely no question about her guilt. Some have said that they might have dragged her right out of her adulterous bed right in front of Jesus. Maybe unclothed, maybe with a bed sheet wrapped around her. But obviously humiliated, embarrassed, and being degraded as she's dragged in front of Jesus. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. What do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. Now, if it's you and I in the place of Jesus, and we're very familiar with the law and its consequences, we know at that moment there's only two choices. I have to agree with the Pharisees, with the teachers of the law, that this woman deserves to die and should suffer those consequences. Or I could talk to them about grace and mercy, and they will use that to accuse me before the people of not following the law as I should. But Jesus, and this is the beauty of this entire illustration, it looks like there's only, again, and I know I'm being redundant, A or B, left or right, black or white. There's only two options. But there is a hidden option that they never saw coming. Jesus doesn't even respond to these guys. He bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. Now, there's a lot of speculation about what Jesus wrote in the dirt. Okay, I happen to agree with those who think that probably he started writing down murder, lust, lying, stealing, whatever. Maybe writing down just a list of sins people are guilty of. When they kept on questioning him, and I'm sure they were berating and demanding an answer, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time. The older ones first. Obviously they got it. The younger ones finally picked it up. The older ones first, until only Jesus was left with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Go now and leave your life of sin." Here is the first important key to the hidden option. There is always a hidden option. See, the religious leaders, again, trying to trap Jesus with only two options. The first is to suggest we should execute this woman by stoning her. Many people believed and understood that's what God's law demanded. Unfortunately, if he agreed, it would be implied that Jesus was then her executioner. And that would appear to contradict everything he was teaching about grace and about forgiveness. So the implied, again, second option was for Jesus to say she should not have to suffer the consequences of her sin, and that would put him in direct opposition to God's law. So you can see that for him at the moment, neither option was good as far as the religious leaders and the Pharisees were concerned. They were trying to put him between that rock and hard place, lesser of two evils. Which choice do I make? Jesus decided to step outside of that trap and find another option, not one that they'd presented to him, even though it appeared that the situation he'd been put in was a hopeless one. His creativity allowed for a better option. And I want, for just a brief moment here, to dispel something that maybe someone has said to you in the past. Maybe someone at some point has looked at you and said, you know, you're just not a very creative person. And I'm talking to you about igniting creativity to find an option in a hopeless situation that will bring honor to God. And yet you've been told perhaps that you're not a creative person. And here's what we're going to do with that. We're just going to set that aside, because this morning, if you are a follower of Jesus, in you lives the most creative person that I know. The one who created heaven and earth. The one that created where the world we live in, the universe, and all that is in it. The Word of God says without him was not anything made that was made. So while you might have been told you're not a creative person, in you dwells the most creative person we could ever know. Creativity is in you. Now, I'm not a computer expert, so I had to do a little bit of research myself. But did you know that everything you see and you do on a computer, on your smartphone, how many of you know it comes down to two numbers? Yeah, 1 and 0. It's called binary. That's how computers think. That's how they communicate. It's a process. It's a series of ones and zeros. In fact, I've got a binary. Do we have it, Tammy? Guess what you know what? Wow, that's a lot, isn't it? You know what that's computer language for? That actually says Reality Church. That looks like it says 01010010011001010. But that says Reality Church. And that's how computers communicate, 1 and 0. Two options. But we're not limited to those. And our communication with God is not limited to some binary language where there are only ones and zeros, A and B. Once again, we think this way because that's what's been ingrained into us. There's only left or right, A or B, 1 or 2. So when we're confronted with complicated problems, it's easy to fall into the trap of limited or 1 or 2 options. And as difficult as it may be for us to comprehend and accept, but we must begin to process into our lives, is the same creative, hidden options that were available to Jesus are available to us. We just have to believe that they exist and be willing to look for them. Here's the second truth. Hidden options can only be found through God. Now, if you are a believer, you've already experienced the greatest hidden option of all time, and that's called salvation. Because before Jesus, there were only 2 options. We could either obey the law perfectly and live, or we could disobey the law and be separated from God by death. Now, of course, humanity has always tried the first option, to keep the law perfectly. But we all know that that's a complete failure. There's absolutely no way that we can keep the law perfectly. And when we try and strive to maintain that level of life on our own, we miss the option, because we're looking at two options, keep the law or die, and we miss the third option, which is salvation through Jesus Christ, through his death, through his burial, through his resurrection. So no longer do we have to worry about perfectly keeping the law. No longer do we have to worry about death, that is eternal separation from God, because Jesus fulfilled the law and now his righteousness applies to our lives, so we're in relationship with the Father through him. Any of you see the movie The Martian? Matt Damon? That's a true story. No, it's not. I just thought I'd throw that out there and see if you were paying attention. It's the story of a space traveler who finds himself abandoned on the surface of Mars. And because the ship that he's supposed to be on has left, and they don't realize that he's still there, it will take an inordinate amount of time to be able for a rescue mission to come back and get him. And he's got to figure out how to survive on the surface of Mars until the rescue mission can come back. And so through his own creative problem solving and through his own abilities and knowledge, he was able to grow about 4 years worth of potatoes. And he was able to recover and harness a plutonium battery that would provide heat for him on the freezing, deadly cold surface of Mars. So he used his own ingenuity to grow some food and provide an environment that he could survive in. But here was the problem. Ultimately, his efforts could only take him so far. It would require outside help if he was ever going to get off the surface of Mars. We can't save ourselves. We can do the very best we can, using our own strength, using our own abilities, using our own knowledge, using our own skills, but we cannot save ourselves. God has to intervene, and he did by offering redemption to us. That would be the first and the most important of God's provisions for us. But he also, as he provided salvation, and this is the correlation between the two, and if you're wondering why I'm talking about that, because God, who is the provider of salvation, a means by which we can live a life that is pleasing and acceptable to him and not be concerned about keeping the details of a law or worried that if we don't, we'll be separated from him by death, that we can live that life of freedom through Jesus. That same God who's provided that also is willing to and able to provide the hidden options for us when we're faced with life's complicated problems when we need them. So if you have already accepted and you believe in and you have trusted in the redemptive work of Jesus, you can take that same faith, that same confidence, and that same trust and believe that the creative Jesus can offer you an option that's not obvious, that's not the lesser of two evils, but when you opt to accept it, brings honor to his name. Here's the third and final point and truth. When we find that hidden option, it offers hope for us and for others. See, when Jesus escaped that trap that had been set for him by the religious leaders, by the Pharisees, When he escaped the trap of that woman caught in adultery, he provided more than just hope for himself, obviously. I mean, he offered hope to a woman who, based on the law and its consequences, actually deserved the penalty that would have been imposed on her based on the law. In her situation, imagine for a moment that she had never been brought to Jesus, never had an opportunity to stand before him. In her embarrassment, in her humiliation, in that moment when she was being demeaned and degraded, there she stands before Jesus. I don't know about you, but I seem to remember that that's exactly how I found myself standing before Jesus. Humiliated, embarrassed, demeaned, and degraded by my own sinful choices. And there I stand, guilty, deserving death. And if it had been left up to some of the folks that knew me, that's probably what they would have gave me. But here's this woman standing here, completely trapped. She has no way of helping herself. I mean, she is caught in the act. She is fully guilty. No way of helping herself. And if Jesus had not found a way to escape that trap, there is no question that woman would have surely died. I have to believe that standing in that crowd of people that were there, not just the religious leaders and Jesus and the woman, but there were probably some very curious onlookers who had followed the leaders as they dragged this woman to the place where Jesus was. I'm sure a crowd of people was attracted to that moment. And I have to believe that in that crowd there were a lot more people who feared the possibility of a similar punishment waiting for them because of the things they had done, the hidden things, the uncovered, the things that have been not uncovered yet. And that hope that Jesus gave to that woman spilled out on them as much as it did for the woman who was on trial at that moment. When we find the hidden option, the one that's not the most obvious, that's not the lesser of two evils, not only does it bring hope for us, but it brings hope for people that are around us, for our family members and for our friends. Those who are waiting to see, what are we going to do? And when we come up with not just a good choice, but a God choice, that hope is extended to others around us. The only way to find it is through God. But I can assure you of this promise and of this certainty. There is a hidden option. It's always there. If we will simply say, Father, I can't accept either one of these choices. You, by the Holy Spirit, in your creative way and in your creative power, show me what to do. And I believe that He will. I'd like for you to stand with me for just a moment. Because there's something that I want to do. If you are this morning facing what seems to be an impossible situation, where there is no acceptable choice for you as far as you can see right now, I want to pray a prayer of agreement with you. But I want it to involve a move on your part to come and join me here at the front. Now, why would I ask you to do that? When I was a young guy in ministry, I used to ask God a lot of questions. And it's okay to do that. And His answers sometimes are just answers that are for you. They're not necessarily answers that you need to share with everybody, because it's just God responding to you. And believe it or not, I asked God one time, because I was curious, Why did you say lay hands on the sick and they'd recover? Why did you say that? Why did you say lay hands on the sick? And the answer God gave me was a simple one. For most of us, it's not human nature. It's not normal for us to invite people into the problems in our lives. We're mostly private people. And we don't go out publicizing the struggles that we're having. But when you are struggling with a physical problem, and there seems to be no solution, no answer, no way to resolve it, if you allow someone to lay their hand on you and pray for you, you are actually acknowledging this problem is bigger than me. It's outside of my ability and my knowledge and expertise to deal with it, and you are inviting someone else into your problem, into your struggle. Because you know that it's not legal for us to just go around touching people, is it? And you can get in trouble just go touch some random stranger. They might even be able to charge you with simple assault because you touched them, their person, without their permission. So you have to give permission for somebody to touch you. And that's what we're doing when we lay hands on the sick. You're giving permission for somebody else to touch you, to get involved in your problem. That's why I want to invite you to come and join me here. Take that step and acknowledge, hey, this problem, this situation is bigger than me. I need the creative God to give me the hidden option. Show me what I'm supposed to do. And I want you to come now and join me, and I'm just going to pray with you.